greatest storyteller of all time? Is it Tolkien? Is it C.S. Lewis?
Nah, although we can't disagree with the professor.
So who is it?
That is an excellent question. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Catholicism and Coffee. I am Stephen Gosensky.
I'm Beth Kaczynski.
We talk about Catholicism, all things Catholic, the Catholic creative life, and all kinds of other cool stuff. We enjoy some great brews. Today we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about?
Why Catholicism and storytelling go hand in hand. So, a great mashup of Catholicism and the creative life.
Yes, which we'll be delving more into this as we go along. But we wanted to kind of start it off here.
Yeah. So if you've been following us for a while, you probably know we love storytelling. We're writers, we're film fanatics. Well, you're a film fanatic and a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. And you read a lot of books.
I do read a lot of books. We watch.
I do too.
Yes. We watch several movies. And we go a lot into the creative life, creativity, storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And now today we're going to talk about how it relates to Catholicism.
So, let's start off with historically. Originally, there wasn't a whole lot written down in the early church. I mean, they had the Torah and a lot of the books of the Old Testament.
The Didache.
The Didache.
That came a little later.
Yeah, but we didn't have a lot written down. We had letters and stuff like that, but the Gospels, for the most part, were not written down at that point.
And part of that is because Christianity was very much frowned upon, and they didn't want to write things down because who knows what could have happened. You could have found yourself in big trouble.
Yep.
So what did the church use because they didn't write things down?
Oral tradition,
Yes.
which is telling a story to one another. Now, some people are probably thinking, oh, maybe it got messed up through a game of telephone. Because, I mean, we've all played telephone.
We have.
It gets messed up. But there are certain things that were consistent from oral tradition on, and that's how we helped determine scripture canon. We'll probably go into that at some point.
Now, oral tradition, it was the teachings and the beliefs of the church, but who's going to remember things if you just tell them a bunch of facts? Like, oh, we believe in God. We believe in 3 persons, 1 God. Maybe you'll believe it because you've heard it over and over again. But if someone tells you a story, you're probably going to be more likely to remember that.
And it's been a common practice of ancient civilizations. You know, we had cave paintings and stuff like that.
Yes.
But storytelling is so essential to the human experience.
Yes, and Catholicism is no exception.
What was, we'll use a personal example from our lives. When our parents met, what would you say was the turning point that you were like, okay, in our observation, what was the turning point of their relationship? You're like, okay, they're going to get along fine.
A certain story that was shared.
A certain story. It was a story. And that was so essential in to develop the relationship between our parents, and it helped strengthen our relationship. Obviously, we weren't married yet. We weren't even engaged yet. We were just dating. But that is so key. The storytelling is such a key part of the human experience that the church would be foolish to ignore that. And she didn't. Christ himself did not. Christ himself is the greatest storyteller. Because what were a majority of his teachings?
Parables.
Parables. What are parables?
They're stories.
So, that's the short end of it. Storytelling and Catholicism go hand in hand because it has been part of our tradition since the very beginning.
And we're not talking about Jesus as the very beginning. We're talking about even further back. Adam, Eve, Moses, Abraham. Well, Abraham came before Moses.
Yeah. And if any of you, and it's even in traditions of Judaism.
Yes.
If you've ever been to a Seder supper, they actually retell stories of salvation history. They're storytelling. They pull from the Torah. It is not unusual for stories to be part of culture.
Yes. And Jesus himself, as a boy, he would have learned about the Jewish faith through the stories, through the Old Testament stories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he knew everything because he was God, but it was still a practice that he had in his household with Mary and Joseph.
Yeah. And storytelling is part of our everyday existence as Catholics.
Yes.
Look at the Mass. Specifically, the consecration. What is the priest doing at first? He's telling a story.
Yes.
When he took bread, not Jesus took bread, it's not facts, it's storytelling. Helps put the congregation in the mindset of actually being there at the Last Supper. That's not anything to shrug your shoulder. Yeah, well, yeah, we hear it all the time, but really think about that.
And going a bit on a larger scale, everything we do in the faith, it's part of a larger story. The story of salvation history. Because a story, by definition, is just an account of events. Salvation history is an account of many, many events spanning thousands and thousands of years, and we are part of that story now. Someday in the future, people are going to be teaching about church history. They'll be teaching about the time we're living in now. They'll be sharing stories of what we were going through, what our popes did.
Mm-hmm. Heck, even in our lifetime, people are telling stories of St. Pope John Paul II. We both lived through a part of his papacy. There are people who are born today who had not known any other pope other than Francis or Benedict XVI. Nothing wrong with that, it's just fact. So they're hearing stories of St. John Paul II. You're just seeing it in your own households now.
And when we relate big events just in our personal lives to people, do we just tell them the facts? I mean, if someone asks how we met, I'm not going to be like, well, it was a day in November, and it was the Friday after Thanksgiving. I'm be like, we were in a coffee shop, and then he walked in and he looked just like his picture online.
Exactly. How do you catch people's attention? You tell them a story.
Yes. How do you remember things? You'll remember the stories. Think of when you were in school. How much of the just boring facts and presentations do you remember? But think about the teachers who told a lot of stories. I bet you remember a lot of those.
Yeah. My history class. I'm a terrible test taker. My history professor will be the first to tell you that. But he said, you know the material. It's because he told stories. He was able to provide it in a narrative structure. And that's how I best remember things. And that's the majority of how most people best remember things is story. Now there are some mathematical people out there. Great. You guys are us. They make our lives easier. But the majority of folks are interested in stories.
Think about what you know about any saint. Do you remember the day they were born, the day they died, their feast day? Maybe you do. But do you remember the stories of what they did in their lives?
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't remember what Mother Teresa's feast day is. But I remember stories of what she did. How she went to Calcutta. How they asked her, oh, do you have any weapons with you? And she said, yes, my prayer books.
Yeah. Stories of, our fondness for Mother Angelica. Stories of stuff she said.
Yes. Stories of Fulton Sheen.
Yeah, we have a special place in our heart for Venerable Fulton Sheen.
Do you even remember where he was born?
I know he was born in Illinois.
Was he born in Illinois? I know he served there.
Oh no, he was born in New York, I think. But yeah.
But do you remember the story of him pushing someone into the confessional?
Oh yeah. But, hearing his stories about, if you look at his broadcast, he told a lot of stories.
Yes.
He told them in narrative jokes.
Yes.
They were pretty funny.
And we're not just saying, oh, it's so good to have stories, we experience them, but it's important that we have these because we need to remember the faith. If we don't remember it, we can't pass it on. It can't outlive us. How do you think the church has lived for 2,000 plus years?
Storytelling.
Storytelling. Oral tradition. The sharing of the faith. It's not just, here's a list of facts that you need to know to be a good Catholic. Though it's important to know the teachings, to know what we believe.
But how do you know the why?
Exactly.
Storytelling.
Yes.
Why does the church believe this? Well, 2,000 years ago, 2,000 plus years ago, story. Here you go. In the end of the gospel for the week that we're recording
For Divine
this,
Mercy Sunday.
for Divine Mercy Sunday, the day we're recording this, at the end it goes, Jesus performed many other miracles in the sight of the disciples that are not written in this book. But these are recorded so you can have eternal life. Here's our proof. And what are the Gospels? Stories.
Lots and lots of stories.
So, storytelling in Catholicism and the Mass. Just going beyond just the consecration. What is the Mass? A story. We have narratives from the Bible. We have oftentimes in homilies, they relate stories. The priest or deacon, they relate stories. So how we can relate to these things.
Speaking of stories, shall we share one of our works in progress?
Sure! Which one are you talking about? There's a lot.
There are a lot. I'm talking about your big one that maybe you heard about on our announcement when we went live last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Fairly recently.
Yes.
I'm writing a book.
Yay.
You refer to it as a faith and film memoir. So, in the book, I'm going to be talking about how certain films helped inform or strengthen my faith. I really can't speak. I write better than I speak. And I'll be relating stories for these films about how they affected me, why they affected me, what was my first experience with them, and stuff like that. I'll be relating faith to storytelling, like our point here. So that's coming out. It's in progress. We're making good progress on it. It's in the editorial phase. The hard part
Yes.
of putting it together is pretty much done. Just tweaking and making it better so that way you all can enjoy the story. And this is a bit in my book, but here's the other thing about relating back to our topic for today's show. I was in a retreat, oh gosh, it's got to be 10, 15 years ago. And one thing always stuck with me. The retreat givers had this one theme. If you want to know the story, then you got to read the book. Storytelling is so essential for our faith. So, we need to read the book.
Yes.
And as Catholics, we get the extended, aka the proper edition. So, read the book. Read about your saints that you love. Read the Bible. There's some beautiful stories in there.
Oh, yes.
Some are pretty wild. But read the stories.
Read the stories.
And if you're a storyteller, a very good one, cultivate that skill. You could evangelize by just telling your faith story. You could evangelize by just telling, hey, I know this story about someone else. Obviously get their permission, but still. Storytelling is so important. Anything else you want to add?
Well, if you like stories, go check out our course, Morality in Movies. We'll relate a lot of stories to the faith.
Lots of stories.
Yes. And keep watching our videos. Please check out our blog. We have a new post every other week now. And we still have our one up from Holy Week.
Yeah. Christopher Chance did yeoman's work on there, and he wanted to share it, and he went down a rabbit hole and shared it with us, and we're like, this is so good. Let's share it with everyone.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So please check it out if you have not yet.
Yeah. It'll wreck you though. Just warning you. But in the best way. And we also are just like, share, and subscribe
Yes.
to our channel and share these videos. Tell your friends! Sorry, I ripped that off of a YouTuber I like. So, in the meantime, if there's nothing else,
I can't think of anything.
be bold, be brave, be courageous, enjoy your beverages. God bless.
God bless.